Hi friends, Miss O'Laughlin here. First of all, I've attached the outline for the math notes on Edmodo. I suggest copying the outline before listening to the rest of the lecture so you have an easier time going through the lecture and filling in what needs to be filled in through the notes. You are going to have to pause at times to finish writing your sentences or definition, and that's perfectly fine. So now that you have your outline filled out, it should look something like this, and you should have some room to write all of this down. So the title of our lesson, of our notes for today, is going to be statistics. And remember to date your notes like always, May 1st, 2014. The purpose of today's lesson is that I want you to be able to recognize and define statistical questions. So before we start learning about the statistical questions, there are some academic vocabulary we will have to go over. First of all, statistics can be described as numerical data relating to a group of individuals or a group of numbers that represent individuals. And statistics is the study of data. So you're collecting the data, you're analyzing it, and you're interpreting it. So you're saying what it means. We need to know about statistics because statistics is how we make sense of data collected during research. With a better understanding of statistics, we can be more critical about what information is given to us and how it's presented. We should be more critical on statistical data because how the data is presented to us can be misleading or it can be misinterpreted. Throughout our unit, we will explore the true meaning of statistical data and we'll be able to summarize and evaluate given statistics. But for now, let's get back to statistical questions. A statistical question is a question that anticipates variability in the data that would be collected in order to answer the question. Let me say that one more time. A statistical question is a question that anticipates variability in the data that would be collected in order to answer the question. What is variability, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. Whoops, it's down here. Variability in a data set occurs when the observations, responses, or results in the data set are not all the same. So it's what makes the data different from one another. Lastly, let's just make sure we're on the same page with what data is. So I'm defining data, and I would like for you to define data in your notes as collection of facts or information from which conclusions may be drawn. Now that we're all caught up on our vocabulary, let's explore the concept of statistical questions a little bit more. Right now, I'm going to give you two examples of a statistical and a non-statistical question. And this is for your grid. So you have that grid that you should have drawn. So an example of a statistical question would be, how tall are the students in your school? This is a statistical question because there's a variety of possible answers, and these answers will have trends. So when I say a variety of possible answers, that basically means everybody has a different height. So there's going to be a different representation of heights depending on the student. There's going to be trends, and these trends could depend on how old you are, because obviously the kindergartners are going to be shorter than the sixth graders. It's going to depend on your gender, if you're a boy or a girl, and like I said, your grade. So to mirror that, an example of a non-statistical question is, how tall are you? This is not a statistical question because there is only one correct answer and one variable, you. You are not asking a bunch of different sources, and you're not gathering information from a variety of different people. You're just asking one person. Therefore, that's not a statistical question. So, keeping in mind that a statistical question calls for variability, which basically means it addresses differences amongst a group, I'm going to give you some examples. I would like for you to write down what questions are statistical questions on another piece of paper. I'm going to collect these pieces of paper tomorrow in the morning, and I'll give you a moment to think about whether or not each question is statistical or not, and why. So, the first question I'm going to ask, I want you to decide if it's a statistical question or not, and if it is a statistical question, please write it down and bring it to school tomorrow. So the first question is, how old are the students in my school? Again, that's how old are the students in my school? The next question I'm going to ask, and I want you to think about if it's a statistical question or not, is, how many letters are in my name? Is the question, how many letters are in my name, a statistical question? The next question I want you to ask, or to categorize as either a statistical or non-statistical question, and remember, if it's a statistical question, write it down and bring it to school tomorrow, is, what are the math test scores of the students in my class? What are the math test scores of the students in my class? Lastly, the last question I want you to think about, if whether or not it's a statistical question, how old am I? Is the question, how old am I, a statistical question? Okay, now that we've looked at the different kinds of questions and you've had a chance to think about what is a statistical question and what's not a statistical question, I want to talk about one more aspect about statistical questions. And I would like for you to think about how certain questions will get a wide range of responses and other questions will get a more narrow range of responses. So certain questions, you'll get a bunch of different answers. Other questions, you'll get the answers won't be as different. For example, what is the height of each person in my class? This question will this question get a wider range of answers or a narrower range of answers, and why? This question is going to get a more narrow range of answers. And while there are some height differences in the class, there's no one who is excessively tall or anyone else who is excessively small. It's not like you're comparing a 2-year-old's height to the height of a 25-year-old grown man. All of you are kind of in the same growth spurts in your life. And while there is a difference between the tallest and the shortest person in the class, you are all around the similar kind of height. So, think about the range for the next question. And when I say the range, I want you to think about whether the range will be great, whether there will be a lot of different answers, or if there will be not as many different answers. How many pets are owned by each student in school? Will this question get a wider range of answers or a narrow range of answers, and why? This question will yield a wider range of answers because there are many students in our school, and there's some students who may own a lot of pets. There are other students who may own a little bit, only a few pets, and then there are other students who do not own any pets. So the range of answers could be anything. Who knows, maybe someone at Halecrest Elementary has 20 dogs and cats versus someone who doesn't have any pets. So the range is going to be a lot wider for this question. Now that we've had some practice with statistical questions, I would like for you to write down a statistical question for the class. So write down this question on a piece of paper and bring it to class tomorrow. Remember, a statistical question is a question that anticipates variability in the data that would be collected in order to answer the question. So be sure that your question will get different responses depending on who you ask. That's it for this lesson. See you tomorrow.